Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Matt Church, and welcome to the video about decisions. Basically, what I want to sort of unpack in this video is that there's a big difference to being inspired to do something versus committed and actually getting it done. So let's chat about that. Alrighty, there are 5 critical decisions we think sit in front of you right now, but before I go any further, let's just talk a little bit about decisions and why it matters. Imagine a horizontal line, and inspired is on one end and implementation is on the other. And you say, how do I move from turned on to getting on with it? It's going to be a series of decisions. And this is the difference between someone who's interested or someone who's committed. I've got this video right up front in our curriculum because this is not a game for everybody. And so the first of the 5 critical decisions is, are you going to play the practice game? We make this distinction between businesses, jobs, and practices, and we unpack that in the curriculum in other videos. But ultimately, assuming you know that we are trading time for money and it's around yourname.com and it is a personal exertion model, even though we are focusing on a labor of love, but it is you trading time for money, which most business advisors would criticize. I want to first of all check that you're okay with that decision, because everything we teach is based on a practice model. It's something that gets you right close to the exchange of value for those that are into economic models. And for someone who's into purpose-led or conscious business, it's very much the right livelihood concept in Buddhism, because there's nowhere to hide and you are directly in exchange with your clients who buy and the customers who buy your services. It requires and demands an authenticity and an integrity. You're not hiding in a corner office on level 7. Okay, so it's really, really direct. And I love that, because the direct model means that I have immediate feedback of whether what I'm doing is of value. And also it serves me as a teacher to really enjoy the teaching dynamic. And my hope is that's for you. So decision number 1, are you willing to do a practice game? All right, so decision number 2 is, are you willing to have a crack at being a thought leader? Now, an expert knows something, a thought leader is known for knowing something. So we've got to kind of turn up your exposure, because while you're an expert, you've got to chase work. Once you become a thought leader in your position, work comes to you. So it moves from an exertion model where you've got to go out and hustle to an attraction model where you're positioning. Now, early days, you've got to hustle, but the attraction model brings work in for you. All right, so number 2, the second decision. The first one was, are you willing to run a practice? The second one is, are you willing to do it as a thought leader? And in this decision, you might go, the question we like to ask is, do you have a book in you? Now, you might have already written one. We like thought leaders to write, 3 books over a decade minimum, preferably a book a year to 2 years, and that your books are kind of the positioning beachhead for your practice. So you can be an expert who coaches and trains and who facilitates, but you're doing it with someone else's intellectual property. So you might have picked up, a Clifton Strength Finder coaching certification. You might have picked up a Myers-Briggs or an LSI or someone else's model, and you're using that in the world. We encourage you at Thought Leaders that needs to be your model for you to get the kind of dollars up and days down that we're going to be pushing for in this curriculum. You've got to be the thought leader. And it's a real simple question. Do you have a book in you? And are you willing to write a book? And to write a series of books, actually, not a single book. And if you go, look, I am willing to run the practice model and I'm willing to write a book, then I go, good. You've made the first 2 decisions. And remember, you can get turned on by an idea like this. There's a million 6-figure programs promising you to get rich in your pajamas. This is not that. This is an exertion model. There is work. It's good work, but you're on the wrong side of a whole lot of good work. And because of that, and because of the direct value exchange I talked about in decision number 1, you stand behind this work, and it becomes very much a labor of love. So decision number 2, are you willing to write a book? Are you going to do it as a thought leader, not as a thought repeater? All right, number 3, the third decision. Now this one's to do with our revenue ladder, and the decision is, are you going for black belt? And black belt is $720,000 a year in billings, which is made up of, $60,000 a month. And we encourage you to focus on going for that level of revenue. Now, at one level, that's an overwhelming amount of money for like a coach working, in an organization. And for others, it's not enough money for those that are looking at trying to chase businesses. So I can see, depending on where your point of view is, that might sound like a lot or not enough. We think it's the sweet spot. You've got 50 to 200 days a year where we can sell your time. We want you to earn half to 1.5 million doing so with 1 or maybe 2 staff. And that's the core proposition of what it means to run a thought leaders practice. You will have read about that in our green book, The Thought Leaders Practice. So going for black belt or 720 is a decision that I'd like you to sit with and make. And you'll notice as you're listening to me, you might be negotiating down where you'll go, no, I'm not going to go for black belt. I'm going to go for green belt. 360,000 a year sounds like enough. And I want you to sort of understand that having done this for decades with so many different people, that is the number for us to focus on. It's going to take us $250,000 to run your practice. I want $500,000 coming out to you and your family. And so I want black belt to be the goal for you. And I don't often say I don't often use my pronouns, and I'm certainly not dogmatic, but read the green book, understand this is the process, because the third decision is you're going to black belt. The fourth decision is you're willing to use the structures and strategies that we teach, which is ultimately the cluster strategy. And the cluster strategy is a very simple hypothesis where you simply go, I think these people want to hear this message and want to receive it in this way. And we build out the cluster strategy from that. There are videos that you'll be able to watch on cluster strategy. You've got the green book again and the curriculum book possibly. And if you're reading those, then you'll understand how our only strategy is the cluster strategy. What's your message? And we start with message. Who values that, which is your market, and how are you going to deliver that to them, which is the method. And this idea of message, market, and method is the cluster strategy. That's the fourth decision, is that so first of all, you're going to run a practice. Number 2, that you're happy to go for black belt using your IP. So that's the first 3 there. And then this fourth one is that you're willing to do it as the cluster strategy. And what we do is we launch a new cluster every quarter. We try to get it to generate $10,000 a month. And once it does, we consider that a stable, successful cluster. We're going to launch 12 of them over 3 years, so a new one every quarter. And we're expecting half of them not to work. So it's got a really good fail rate. And this is just to normalize the experimental nature of clusters, right? So you're going to run a practice, you're going to do it around your IP, you're going for black belt, and you're going to use the cluster strategy. They are the first 4 decisions. The 5th one is the decision of, would you like some help with that? And if you would, then come and join our business school and we'll help you implement it one-on-one. So this is the decision framework I invite you to consider. If you're going to spend 100 hours or more watching videos and reading books, let's make sure it's with the right initial decisions in mind. My name's Matt, and it's been a pleasure.